Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I am Mario Gangemi, the chair of the MDTA Capital Committee, and will be conducting this morning's meeting. I hereby call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. In accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is being conducted via video conference and live streamed on the MDTA Capital Committee page. As a reminder, all members of the Capital Committee will have their video active during the entirety of the meeting. I will add that member Enzer is having technical difficulties. However, he is on the phone. To minimize background noise during the call, I do ask that everyone on the line mute your phones or your computers. Anyone who is presenting or answering a question, to turn your video and audio on when speaking, and when done, turn your video off and your audio back on mute. There are no members of the public, no elected officials, and no media that have pre-registered to comment on today's meeting. Therefore, we can move on to agenda item number 1, which is approval of the open session meeting minutes of February 2nd, 2023. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by member Cox.
Second.
Second by member Gaines. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that was everybody. So we are approved. Now we can move on to Mr. Peter Matijat, who's going to talk to us all about the I-895 over Herring Run erosion and scour mitigation project.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Forgot to ask, should I be sharing the?
No, sir, they have the materials in front of them.
Oh, yes, correct. Okay, so I'm just gonna walk through it. So let's go ahead and get started. This is for the emergency project and the collaboration between the structures division and environmental. Go to page 2. This is the agenda I'll discuss. Go over the site, the threat, what happened there, and kind of get into actually what happened, how we got to this point, and the remediation, which was an emergency, and a summary for helping us in the future. So if you go to the third slide, you'll see that we're right smack in Baltimore, and it's right on where 895 goes over Herring Run, which is a significant stream through Baltimore City. The fourth slide. This is where you'll see that 895 has had multiple modifications. It was built in 1956. There was an expansion in 68 and 2007. And if you'll notice, there's a sheet pile that's on both sides of the stream. That's what we're going to be focusing on in our remediation. That was added in 1968. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, a picture of the bridge, Herring Run, and this is the upstream side. You'll notice that on Pier 2 to the left, that's where we found the massive erosion and scour happening. And as we address that, as I go through the presentation, we found out we have issues also on Pier 1. So this project unraveled as we got into it, and we're going to show how we addressed each one of them. So slide 6, it's just going to give you a picture of the piers, but also recognizing that there's the overbanks. That was as much in play as dealing with the stream itself. And slide 7, here's where you'll see where the damage has been done. That sheet pile goes wrapped around and went under the bridge, and what happens is the stream kept overflowing, and it just created a massive failure in that area there, which prompted us to do an emergency assessment and repairs. Perspective-wise, I hadn't seen anything like this in my water resource career, and this was quite alarming. So we moved very quickly. Slide 8. We went from not only just the upstream side where the sheet pile was, sheet wall. We were also recognizing there were some issues with the scouring of the bed, and there was indications like, for example, the sheet pile wall under the bridge was starting to bulge out a little bit. So that led us to slide number 9. Here's where we had underwater divers going in and around the sheet pile and recognizing, what was the depth. And this was quite alarming, is that we had the Pier 2 issue, but as we recognized that Pier 1 was also in danger underneath the bridge because the scour had shifted from to the left to the right of the stream. And this was quite a big assessment finding that we really started moving very quickly on, not just filling in, but actually doing hydraulic analysis, recognizing what stream events and flood events we had prior to this. So this all comes to roost when you look at slide 10. This actually shows the multiple modifications, shows you where the bridge piers are, and more importantly, you'll see that the stream is getting lower. It's scouring, and that is where the risk became real because it started getting near the bottom of the sheet pile, which is protecting the footers. And this was pretty much captures what the risk we're at and what our goals are for remediation. So slide 11. Here I want to talk about, how did we get here? And one thing is, everyone understands Baltimore is intensely urban, and it changed over the last 70 years since 895 was built. One of the other quite interesting is that it's the transition in the physiographic transition from Piedmont to coastal plain. One of the things you'll see out in some of these photos is a lot of gravel and sand. Well, that comes from the coastal plain, but there's quite a bit of energy shift from the Piedmont to coastal. So that played a significant role. And that's one of the things that we had to address in our remedial. One of the things is that we're experiencing extreme precipitation, which create flash discharges. This is part of the climate change where the intensity of storms are intenser and they're shorter. So there's quite a bit of flashiness in around Baltimore that unfortunately we're having experience. And what happens is the stream has been moving the channel, and you'll see some aerial images that demonstrated that it no longer stream goes right straight on the ridge. What we call is it changed its angle of attack, and that's one of the things we'll show you and demonstrate what we need to do for the future. All right, slide 12. Just to reinforce, hey, Herring Run is a significant part of Baltimore City, and it's very urbanized. So it was no surprise that we have a flashy stream coming to the bridge. So let's go back in time. Slide 13. There's 1959. This is shortly after the 895 was built, and the stream looked pretty behaved there. It went straight under the bridge, straddled it, and fortunately streams don't behave like that. They don't stay there. So slide 14. You'll see in 2015 that stream has moved. Not only has it moved, but you'll see that pronounced sand gravel bar just upstream of it. This had a big role in where the stream moves in flood events. You could see that the stream went right over. It doesn't take water resource person to see that when the floods, that stream went right over that area that got scoured. Next slide, 15. This is 2017. You can see the stream is still over there, but it's very dynamic. It's very moves quite a bit. The sand and gravel bar never really goes away, but it shifts and has different turns. But more importantly, in slide 16, this is the one we want to really look closely at. This is March, and this is 2018, and it's not that much different from 2017. But you'll see the area that is eroded is still intact. Well, if you go to slide 17, 6 months later, it had overrun. So in that brief window of 6 months, we had the scour and erosion. I suspect there's always been, you know, nips and cuts here and there, but that was when those 6 month period, it really wreaked havoc, and it was exponential in the damage. But let's look at slide 18. This really is, for water resource person, is really quite an eye opener, because 2018 was considered a very wet year. Well, in the context of Herring Run, it was also very flashy. You'll see a lot of peak storms that kept coming between March and November, and roughly about the 3,000, 4,000 flow mark, that's when it starts going out of bank. So you could see that the bridge got pretty much left hook, right hook. Basically, it got kept getting punched, and that's where that area that eroded and scoured, it just kept getting hits of peak flows nonstop in pretty much like a 3 to 4 month window.
Pete,
And
is there a
yeah.
what's the base flow in the stream?
Oh, it's very small. I mean, we're talking about maybe 100, 200 CFS.
Okay.
So you can see it ramps up quickly.
Yes.
And that's a good question, because when they were working in the stream, 100, 200 CFS, well, those peaks, when they came, those weren't over a course of hours. They're like, they had, within an hour or two to get everybody not only out of stream bed, but get out of the floodplain. So this was a very flashy stream, and continues to be. Seeing that context, you can see 2018 really did some damage there. So we go to slide 19. Trying to target all the remedial areas, obviously that upstream sheet pile wall and the overbanks. And then we also looked at the context of having to address that gravel sediment bar, because we wanted to make sure that we can reroute the stream and tame it a little bit, the channel. And then, we go underneath the bridge. There's a sheet pile on both sides for Piers 1 and Piers 2. We did work in the overbanks, because we saw a lot of evidence of water, not just, going straight downstream. It hooked back in. It started creating scour up on the top side. These were all things that we had to address at the same time in an emergency. And we used an on-call, and that was one of the things we started with a task order at the upstream side. And as we were gathering information, we realized, wow, we got to expand it and include a lot of work underneath the bridge. And at the same time, working with the permit agencies, because, when you work in a stream, there's a lot of sensitivity, and, we moved pretty quickly, and they were all on board. So again, one of the themes here is that we had a great collaboration to get things moving forward, because we didn't have time on our hand. So slide 20. Now you're going to start seeing the real nitty-gritty work, and basically we had to rebuild a whole bank there, and starting in the stream. And one of the things we had to recognize is like, well, how do we put a good foundation that won't scour away, basically locking it in place? And that took a lot of work with the contractor and constructability, took a lot of work with the regulators, working in the stream. And one thing is that upstream end of that sheet pile was actually dangling, so it actually, undercut it. So we had to really reconstruct a good foundation. And once we got out of the water, so to speak, then we started, getting into traditional backfilling and compacting. We had to put what we call a smart ditch in, because there was a ditch that got totally torn out, concrete. But this detail it took quite a bit of time, and had a lot of input from structural construction and water people.
Mr.
So,
Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Peter, not to interrupt you, about how long is this now, how along the stream are you going as far as this project?
How long we're going with it?
How long is it, the length?
Oh, good question. Basically, we were fortunate to have a little right away upstream, so I'm going to say it's about 100 feet. And that's a great question, because the future we have to, this was, I will call, keep things in place for the bigger improvement, which will be a stream stabilization, which then we'll move upstream with, and then we'll have to work with the city. That'll take several more 100 feet, just for context.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Slide 21 here, you can start seeing the rebuilding of the bank. And you know, when we had that curtain out in the stream, well, that's not only for sediment, but you know, we have to recognize when we're using grout bags, there's concrete, pH. So we had quite a few environmental people there just trying to keep tabs and make sure that, you know, we're not impacting downstream. And and there were a few storms along the way that they had to counter, and knock on wood, we were very successful to, you know, keep things in place and not have to, you know, go backwards. Slide 22, you could really see the amount of mass that we had to rebuild there, and grout bags were pretty effective because, you know, we're working off a roadway that's elevated, and we had to make, you know, recognize the mobility of just equipment. And that was a very useful way to, you know, rebuild and kind of anchor it. It's page 23. One of the things that was really unconventional and is new, but it was very effective, was that we actually graded out the stream gravel bar and moved it back over onto the upstream of what we rebuilt. That took a lot of negotiating with the Maryland Department of Environment, and unfortunately, there was someone other one had set a precedent. What here is that we were trying to rebuild a little bit of the bank just upstream. Call it insurance policy. We know darn well the stream's still going to keep moving. This will basically get nipped away, but at least provide us kind of a guide to when, you know, the stream starts moving back to where we rebuild, because the last thing we want to do is recreate the same problem we had. And this was you know, something that looks simple, but it was really effective in helping to ensure that the upstream side, having the stream basically what we call, you know, the line of attack hit right under the bridge. So let's talk about what work under the bridge now at slide 24. What we found basically with that underwater surveys, that we really had to, you know, put some more material in here, basically rock up and down on both sides, and recognizing that some of that'll slump, and basically we'll have a rock stream bed all the way through. And that too, we had to work with the agencies, and it's one of the things that it took a specialty contractor to really navigate up and along in the water. And it was very encouraging to see how, with a very tight workspace, we were able to really, you know, do what we needed to get done. It wasn't just, you know, bring a dump truck and dump a bunch of rocks. We really had to navigate material down to the banks, navigate into the stream, and then have a really well experienced contractor be able to place the rock and massage it and get it in place. So slide 25 gives you a picture of the before and after, where we armored in the stream. We were able to clean up the overbanks, and that went a long way to, you know, improve the hydraulics. So the next slide, 26, this is kind of just a recap here. It's like, here we were in 2019, streams all the way over the side. We have a, you know, lost eroded bank. But good news is, if you go to page 27, you can see visually, like, you know, the stream's been lined. We've rebuilt the overbanks, and you can't see it all, but definitely the armoring of the channel was a huge improvement. And when you go to page 28, this is kind of neat. This is from our hydraulics model. The darker blue really shows where the stream was high energy to the left side of the bank, and we were able to, with moving the bank, improving the hydraulics underneath the bridge, we really got it back to what it looked like back in when we built the bridge. But we know that it's going to continue to move, but this is what we're subscribing to do with future bridges is really realign stream with the bridge. We can't move the bridge. It is what it is. So that's the nature of the future work is working with the stream in the context of a bridge. In the very last slide, 29, kind of a good recap of the highlights, and recognition that the bridge had multiple expansions, and that's going to happen in other places, but we're in a very flashy ultra urban watershed. It's one of the things we can't change, but we can work with the stream angle of attack to a bridge. That's how we address that. Now the emergency remediation, it was all about the bridge, but you know what? End of the day, we were as much working in the stream. And what the take home was is that the future bridge inspections are going to have to expand on the stream element and recognize what's happening upstream. Do we see any telltale signs of of not just the angle attack, but something where it could erode and create scour issues? And obviously, the future remedial actions will need to keep the stream in context with how to keep it in line with the bridge. But like I said, we had a great collaboration between the structures and environmental divisions, and we addressed a lot of environmental needs here by working with the stream and the watershed dynamics. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool project. Nice to see these in action. And candidly, this sounds like one we should revisit as you start doing the stream restoration stuff. I assume you're going to do that upstream more so than downstream, but I'd love to hear more about that as you get into that.
Yeah, one is a cool project after we got it done. Till then, it was a hair pulling one, but great point, because what we did is, for example, in the stream world, we put in what we call bank scour pins. We literally put a rebar, and we're having people go out there seasonally or after storms and look at the rate of erosion. This by moving the bank over there, we have an opportunity to gauge how much is it's eroding. And yes, we have to catch it before, because that really was an eye opener. In 6 months, we went from being intact to being blown up. So that was definitely a wake up call to monitor the stream in addition to the bridge.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions or
Yeah,
comments?
I had a couple of questions. Who's the contractor on the job?
It was Bronner, but they use a specialty firm to do the in-stream work.
Oh, I see. So we just I just want to examine the time frame a little bit. We were taking pictures of this problem in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And when did the contractor do the work? In 21 and 22?
Yeah, it took it a while because we had all the on-calls were take, but yes, it started in 2019 and bled into 2020 as we were getting different parts done.
So it took a couple of years from when we found it.
Yeah, it straddled.
So were the environmental inspectors are giving? I mean, did they delay the thing a lot, stopping you?
No, actually not. Actually, we were very proactive with them. This was strictly just on the execution side, the contracts, and definitely, I don't want to always go to the COVID card, but that created some challenges, not a big one, but just enough to add a few more delays. But by and large, it was up for us to keep moving forward, and definitely with the upstream part there. I mean, part of the delay was aggravating over like, hey, we can't just put something in and hope for the best. We really worked with the contractor quite a bit on what that looks like and what kind of risks we're contending with.
Member Cox, you got anything to add or questions?
Good. Good presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very interesting. I like these.
Yes,
that was really awesome to see.
Yep, good. Well, great. Well, thank you very much. And again, I'd love to hear, as you start doing the design of the stream restoration with the city, I'd love to love to hear more about that. I've seen a few of those projects throughout the year. So, well, that closes our business for today. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, moved by member
Second.
Gaines, second by member Cox. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, that was all of us. So thank you, everybody. Thank everybody who was on there today. Be safe. Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
And